Thank you so much, Esther, for joining us here on timforrest.com. Esther Levy, she in the food business. I know you have an MBA, nutritional background as well. Why don't you introduce yourself? I know the value you bring to food brands and food manufacturers, specifically on the tech side. But why don't you introduce yourself to our audience and just share with you what you do and how you help food companies?
Of course. Thank you so much, Tim, for having me here. It's a pleasure. My name is Esther Levy. I am a food scientist. I do have an MBA. I've been working in the CPG industry for the past 12 years, specifically in the natural and organic market, and normally with manufacturers. So I've been in manufacturing sites many, many times. And I'm very passionate, of course, about food. I recently formed a consultancy agency with 3 amazing colleagues to help support emerging brands in the natural and organic space in all areas of operations, quality, certifications, supply chain, R&D, labeling, you name it. We've done a lot throughout our careers, and we want to keep doing it, helping these incredible entrepreneurs that are taking risks and helping put better food out there for us. And that's that.
Oh, that's so awesome. And so like, do you get involved with recipe development and sourcing of ingredients?
Yes, exactly. I do. From very early in my career, a lot of what I've done and did, it's R&D. So recipe development, sourcing, with a focus on scalability, right? So we don't create recipes like you would do for a restaurant. We're really focused on scalable ingredients and efficiencies, right? Efficiencies in mind for storage and costs and all of that.
What about claims, labeling, nutritional facts, ingredient statements, those sorts of things, and calorie, all of that? Do you help folks with all the legal side or the demands?
Yeah, we do, and I do help companies and brands with that. And I also, depending on the label, because every product and every category is so unique, and there are standards and regulations, right? So I'm fortunate that for the past several years that I've been in the industry, I've had the honor to work with incredible attorneys, compliance experts. So I've learned a lot, but I also rely on some of my extended network for additional advice.
What are the solutions you bring, or like what are some of the projects you've worked on where you brought solutions to food entrepreneurs and helped them? How did you help them?
I mean, there's so many, but I guess to kind of pinpoint examples, and I'm very passionate about like inventory and like lean inventory, but how does that apply to formulation? Many times I've started at companies and they have like a variety of ingredients. Many times some of the ingredients are not really doing anything in the recipe at that point. Maybe they were when the company was created, maybe like you were adding a certain preservative when the company was started and the package was not permeable, maybe like just like closed by hand. And then as the company scaled, had better packaging, more permeable barrier to protect the shelf life. And then they kept adding like such preservative, right? Like at that point, you don't need it. So it's not only like you can have a cleaner label, but also like reduce an inventory item. So projects like that, normally the founders, the brands, the manufacturers that we work with, they don't even know. And they're so immersed in the day-to-day that it really takes someone from the outside to see it, right? Many examples like that. Many times I've worked where they're processing a particular vegetable to create their own vegetable puree. and like they process it, then they freeze it. Well, like we can buy that already processed, like in a puree form, aseptic, so we don't need the freezer. Like we can get rid of your freezer, many efficiencies that come with formulation that relate, like directly impact cost, inventory, operations,
Labor.
yeah, exactly. Labor, direct labor
Yeah.
costs. Yeah, there's a lot that
Oh,
we
that's
can.
incredible. What are some for food entrepreneurs? What are some ideas or methods that they can begin to think about bringing someone like you on to help them? How do they begin the process? I'm just thinking through what you just shared. So, what would be some tools for them to think about to begin thinking in the way that you're describing, and then for them to think about, well, at what point would I go and ask for help outside or reach out to you, Esther?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I don't know what point, because to me, like, kind of comes natural, right? Like
Right.
in my mind, I would never buy like a pepper in a grocery store, like a local distributor, and like literally grind it myself. Like my mind is at this point, I think, programmed for efficiency and scalability. So
Right.
I would just kind of like from the start, I would focus um, on like sourcing that ingredient or whatever it is, with scalability in mind, right? And
Right.
with that efficiency in mind. So I don't
So
like,
what are some
I guess,
rules? So what are some rules to think about? I'm just saying I'm a food entrepreneur and I want to think like scalability. So can you give us 3 tips or 3 hints at what makes a product scalable or not? So right off the bat, I can just imagine, like, let's just say I needed pumpkin seeds. And so I'm an entrepreneur and I go out and I buy 3 truckloads of pumpkins, and then I like process those to get the pumpkin seeds out, and I have all this stuff left over. It's just a mess. And you don't get
yeah,
very many pumpkin seeds out of it. Whereas I could go to someone like Goodmark and say, I need a 50-pound container, 50-pound corrugated box of pumpkin seeds, and they will ship those to me. How do you go about, are there any tricks or methods or hacks or some way that I can think about that a product is scalable or not? What makes it scalable?
um, what makes it scalable? I think, I mean, any product is scalable, right? I think it's just as you scale, how many changes do you need to make to it to scale
Yeah.
it?
Yes.
Like, so the more strategic you are from the beginning, the less changes you'll have to make to it as you scale.
Yes. So I'm just thinking through this. So the closer that we can, so if we can obtain a supplier of a ingredient that is dropped straight with no processing on our part and dropped straight into our recipe or formulation or manufacturing line, that's a
Mhm.
win. If we have to process it in our facility before it goes into our recipe or into our production line, that's what we want to do. So that's what you're suggesting. We want to remove any of those steps or those processes before it goes into production. Is that
Right. And like we want to be like, so for example, I don't know, I'm developing a recipe with honey, right? And
yes,
this project comes to me and they're like, honey, and I'm like, great, which honey? Oh, I don't know, the one I got on the market. And I'm like, there's tons of varieties of honey out there and they're all tasting different. So we now go into a phase of like really developing like specification sheets for the ingredients to at least make
yes,
sure that we're purchasing a specific variety and prevent flavor variations along the way, because we bought X honey and then we're going to buy this X other honey. And so, so
right.
just little things like that, recording that, and paying attention to varieties, concentration of ingredients, and all of that can make a big change on the final product, right? Like, I worked in juice for 10 years. And even with when you buy like a concentrate, there's different levels of concentrations, right?
Yes.
And that will make a big impact. So you got to pay attention to really the technical data, the specifications of the ingredient itself. In this case, does that make sense?
Oh yeah, it makes total sense. And I spend a lot of time with my clients sharing them. I need a spec. I need to know what the spec is. What is it you need for this and making this? Because they're like, I don't know. I just buy what I think looks good. Like you shared, so many people start. I just look at what's good and then I taste it and I know it's right and then we share it. What do you find are the three biggest problems that food entrepreneurs come to you with?
I mean, I think the one we're discussing, scalability and ingredients,
Yes.
is one, but so usually they don't know they have like such a void in the space until like we're in and we're like, do you have a spec? No, I don't. And then, we're like, oh, okay. Or we see like efficiencies that can be made. I don't know, vinegar, right? Like if you go to the supermarket, the standard, it's 5% acidity. But when we buy vinegar in bulk, we can buy higher concentrations. So we're also like we're having an efficiency with like buying an 11% acidity. Like we're not shipping as much water.
Right.
But many times I feel like they come to us with like a particular project, and then we end up also like addressing other areas to execute the original situation, because the base is not there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense because
and it can be shelf life.
You discover these gaps. You're working on one problem, but then you uncover 5 other issues, and you would have to address those in the process anyway because there's such large gaps, and it's so valuable to the food entrepreneur. It's obvious that you're going to address those.
Yeah, exactly. I had one project not too long ago. Like it was more like an inquiry, right? But it was a shelf life extension project. And I did like a very brief market research, and I actually came to discover that the shelf life that they were asking us to extend, they were within the benchmark for the market. So that's interesting, because you're approached with this project, and then kind of like even like rejecting it in a way, but we're like, we can work on extending it further. Like, of course we can, and that's going to require some capital expense on equipment and all of this, but you can actually keep penetrating the market with the current shelf life. And then maybe once you're a bit bigger, you'll make this investment and get it right.
Yes.
We get approached with so many different topics and challenges, to be honest. And I think between the three of us, we can really have a ton of feedback on a lot of them.
Can you share some of the categories that you worked in? Just like run through a bunch of categories that you've actually worked on products. So you've already mentioned several in our call today. What other categories have you worked on?
Yeah, so I've worked in juice, of course. I've worked in crackers. I worked in pickles. What else? Those are probably the main ones. I worked in produce as well. And then other categories, which are maybe not in R&D, but just like certifications, right? So you don't, right, like not like formulation, but also in certifications or just labeling. My partners, they have experience in baking, for example. So just it's a variety of categories we've tackled.
Did you, I know that I asked you regarding about disruptions in the category, and then you had some questions for me. Were there any questions you wanted to ask me today? Because I do want to ask if people want to reach out to you and ask you a question, how do you recommend they get in touch with you?
Oh, so via email is great. Or LinkedIn. I'm pretty good
I'll put
with messages.
I'll have your I'll put your your email and link below our conversation. But is at Evolve Food, you want to share your email address and go ahead and your LinkedIn profile?
Yeah, for sure. So it's Esther at evolvefoodconsultants.com. That's it. That's my email. You can reach out to me, whomever is listening or watching this. And I'll be happy, to help, support, and or get you to the right connection that I've worked with along the way of my career as well.
Thank you so much, Esther. I think hopefully we provided some value for food entrepreneurs today. And I got to plug my book.
Yes, you did.
Thank
And
you.
it's
It's
a
on
great
Amazon.
read.
Thank you very much.
I think so. And the title, it's all right. Everybody's got a recipe, sure, but what's next?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We got to connect with and provide. And the key is to provide value to consumers.
I
And you share
agree.
it with them.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Tim.
And I
You
enjoyed our
too.
conversation.
Such a pleasure.